Okay, so if you're watching this video, then you made it through the apocalypse. That's what I called it because previous to April 8th, like everything that you saw on the internet and a lot of things that people were talking about, especially when that earthquake happened right before on the East Coast, people were talking a lot about like rapturing and mass destruction, some type of act of nature happening and things like that. People just kind of going all willy-nilly or whatnot. And yeah, I even saw a little article, maybe it was a short or something, about a lady who tipped $1,000 at a restaurant the day before, thinking that she was going to be raptured. You know, the rapture would happen in the eclipse. And I kind of giggled because I started thinking, like, who are you? Number one, the fact that, you know, it's April 8th and you woke up, does that mean that you didn't get raptured? Like, is that what you're thinking? Like, it couldn't have happened because I didn't go. Number one. And then number two, was you trying to just do one last good act? Like, I want this to be the last thing on God's mind before the rapture comes, and I could get some extra brownie points. Because the issue is, once that person didn't get raptured, okay, and the eclipse had passed, April 8th had passed, they want to go back to the restaurant and ask for a refund of their tip. So you weren't even tipping for real, okay? But think of this though. How sinister is it for you to tip somebody, essentially assuming that they're not going to get caught up in the rapture either? I thought that was pretty funny. So you're like, oh, I know you're going to be stuck with all the crash and turmoil, so here's $1,000. So joke's on them. But anywho, after the eclipse though, I don't think people like went willy-nilly, but I definitely received a few calls that were just like filled with emotion and just really some venting. The first call I got, I wasn't actually expecting it, but it was someone that I wouldn't mind taking a call from. I wanted to speak with them anyway, but it wasn't our scheduled time to speak. So when I saw the name pop up on my phone, I was like, oh, cool beans, because I want to talk to them anyway. And I pick up and I'm getting ready to be like, hey, I was just thinking about you, right? Trying to bring that, I was bringing that energy. And they hit me with something totally different. They hit me with, you know what? I'm fed up today. Nobody wants to do their job. I've been on the phone all day with this person and that person. I've done my cognitive behavioral techniques. I met with my group today. They were like, I talked to my accountability coach today. And they were just, I did my affirmations. I meditated. I've been doing my breathing. And I'm still just, right? So they were going through everything that we normally talk about when things are getting a little bit frustrating, and just basically let me know, like, Shea, I'm not with it today. I'm not really wanting to hear your mouth. I just need you to be quiet and perk those ears up. Because sometimes when people call, they're not looking for a solution. And that's different than people who are not solution focused, or they look down on that. So they're complaining for the most part. They are not trying to open up, like look at opportunities that are available to change the situation or redirect the situation a little bit, even if it's just 1 degree. And they don't want to hear you give them any type of advice. But for the most part, now there's some people who are know-it-alls. And they're going to run your mouth whether you want them to or you don't want them to. It'll be like that thing when you're sick or whatever and everybody got a solution. Everybody becomes a doctor all of a sudden with the world's best, health solution. And some people are just that way. But for the most part, you're talking to your friend, you're talking to your family, you keep coming to them with the same quote unquote complaint. Then they're like, you know what, maybe you haven't tried this. I don't know if you have, but they generally want things to be better for you. So they're trying to offer some solutions to try so that that can happen in your world. But there's people who are just like, I'm not trying to do anything about the complaints that I have, and I don't want to hear you trying to do anything. Like, they like being in that space. So complaining and venting are just something very different. And by the time that call was over, like, we were able to laugh at a couple of things. And I even brought up the fact that, like, man, you caught me off guard because I'm getting ready to be like, what's up? And then you hit me with that. And I'm like, okay, well, let me put my hands in my lap and chill. But by the end of the call, we were able to reflect on some things that happened, and they brought up something, in the conversation that they had used before, actually, for this particular, not for this problem, but it was something that seemed like it could be similar. So before we hung up, I was just like, hey, I know you said that you didn't want no solutions, you didn't want to talk about it, but I was thinking when you said blah, 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 I was thinking, well, have you tried contacting them about this particular issue? And then they're like, you know what? I have not done that. You're right. That's probably a good idea. So even at the end of the conversation, even though they weren't looking for any solutions together, with the information they shared, and me being an active listener, because sometimes we just need to do that. If someone's your friend, they're your family, they're your support, you're going to understand that there's a time for active listening. You're like the God of somebody's life, right? So active listening, which is essentially doing nothing. You're just there. It's a passive action that is quite supportive to the other individual. And sometimes that's just needed, and we have to know when that's needed and when it's not. But as the person making the call, we have to know when we're complaining and when we're just venting, because it's something very different. So let me tell you, there is a distinct difference, okay? A very thin line between complaining and venting. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, okay? Because they can be interpreted differently depending on who you're talking to. And I definitely want to take a look at a couple of things that are different between them. Like with the purpose of venting, it's just this brief emotional release, and it allows you to express your feelings, whether that's anger, frustration, or stress, right? You get to get it off of your chest. But with complaining, it's mostly about being dissatisfied about something, being annoyed about something, and it's irritating, and you're persistent about that, which transfers to the other person. But the function of venting is like opening a pressure valve, right? It helps you let go of emotions that are pent up and then clear the way for next steps. Get it? But with complaining, you're just creating a stage for negativity, and then the cloud and the silver linings that you were trying to focus on, or the other person, it's like, oh, if you can't beat them, join them, right? Well, the first attempt is to beat you down with that negative thinking and that fixed state of mind that's really aimed at stifling motivation to seek out opportunities for solutions. And it can really strain relationships. It worsens your mental health and gives you this miserable feeling, where venting focuses more on a healthy expression. And it can be a healthy way to acknowledge or process your emotions that we tend to suppress, right? So with the focus of complaining, though, it's just about negative outcomes, blaming others. Like, for example, you might share your day's challenge with your family or friend just to get emotional support. But when you're complaining, you're repeatedly grumbling about the situation, and you don't want those solutions, like I said earlier. So you have to understand that everyone's emotional environment is very different, and what feels like venting to one person might be perceived as something completely different and a complaint by another person. So if you're seeking resolution and effective ways to manage your emotions professionally, you can consider psychotherapy rather than just bringing it to your friends and family. Have a third party that you discuss that with. But transitioning from a complainer to somebody who's action-driven, it really is a shift in mindset and behavior. The silver lining today means that you're not stuck, okay? There's practical things that you can do to help you make this transformation. So if you haven't already, focus on strengthening your self-awareness. Reflect on your tendency to complain and really begin to understand the situations and the triggers that kick off your complaints and your rants in the first place. Does it have any effects on your well-being or your relationships? Like, are you getting fewer invites to places? Are you spending less quality time with the people that are close to you? Do faces change when you enter the room? Does it get quiet when you enter the room? Like, give more attention to how complaining impacts your well-being and relationships as well. Because shifting your focus, it's about you too. So instead of dwelling on problems, focus on some solutions. I took a little time to think about all the topics that I discuss with individuals and the groups that I facilitate, and only one thing really kept ruminating with me, which was problems. I spend most of my work time talking to people regarding their problems, and most of the demands from me is how can I solve this, right? They want solutions. So I wanted to give attention to empowering others to face hard decisions and knowing that they have the tools to address them. So training your mind to think about actionable steps. It takes training, but ask things like, how can I improve this situation? And then understand that doing nothing, like that active listening, is an actionable step too, and it can be appropriate. I also talk a lot about gratitude because I focus on directing my attention to progressive things happening in my life. I tend to be a person who only focuses on what is broken. So I make an effort to give attention to things that are progressing or going well or simply just aren't problematic, because for me not to have to address those things allows me to give quality time to solution-focused problem solving. Now, even something as simple as being able to purchase groceries. Having the fuel I need definitely allows me to participate in my body movement program, right? To exercise or whatever. I tend to like to complain about the produce selections I get because I'm vegetarian, all right, with my grocery delivery. But in the scheme of things, I'm actually quite appreciative of the individuals choosing to dedicate their time and their resources, right? Because gas is not cheap, because it's saving me time. So it's important for me to express the gratitude that I have, and that helps me shift my mindset away from the complaint, and that's something that we can practice daily. I do talk about keeping journals, but just think about 3 things that you could be thankful for during the day. Celebrating and recognizing when you can take action, because positive reinforcement definitely encourages more action, and you can be that reinforcer for yourself. You don't need anybody to validate it. Part of that reinforcement is about being intentional about your words. Pay attention to the words you use. Instead of thinking, this is terrible, think, I can make this better by. So breaking your goals down into smaller achievable tasks, that's something that maybe can prevent some roadblocks, or at least get through them. You don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, which really just means you don't let the good things go out with the bad. You don't have to give up on your end goal just because you hit a wall or an obstacle that seems unmovable at that current time. What alternatives are there, and what actions can you pivot to while you take time to resolve the obstacle or get over the wall? Maintaining consistency in those steps towards your goal, even if they're small, is going to be a big move for you. Evaluate your response ability. Acknowledge your role in the situations and do your best to avoid blaming others or letting their behaviors have a major impact on your flow. You can ask yourself, what part can I play in resolving this particular thing? This is your active role in being solution driven. So when you're faced with a challenge, focus on finding some solutions rather than dwelling on the problem. So brainstorming ideas and then also reaching out for advice is not a bad deal. Be in control of your venting. Don't let emotional charge go all over the place for you, because it can be healthy, but you have to set boundaries so that you don't cross over into this habit of complaining. Always choose a person that is trusted too to share your feelings with. Someone who can help bring you back to your center so they're that familiar with you. Not someone who is all ready to pull up a seat for misery to keep y'all company, okay? Just remember that change, it does take time, so be patient with yourself and celebrate each step toward becoming more action-oriented. About 4 years ago, I started repeating this little mantra to myself to commit myself to adjusting how I talk to myself and what I thought about daily, what ran through my mind. It's the present is manifested or created by past mindset. So be mindful what you create or make manifest in the future. So present is created by past mindset. So be mindful of what you create in the future. Be present in the moment, because mindfulness reduces the urge to complain. And when I'm talking about that little mantra, the present, right? The things that have happened before, the conditioning that has happened before, the validation that was needed before, the thoughts that we've grown up with, the thoughts and conditioning that we're used to, that's the present. But those are the things that we're operating on in today's time, right? Because that's the information that we've had. And so in order to reprogram that information, to replace those things, those scripts that have been running through our minds, we have to fill our minds with something else. And that does require some work sometimes and some daily training. It doesn't just happen overnight. Just like the things that came before doesn't happen overnight. If we keep using those preset things, right, in our current time where we're present now, then it's most likely going to create the same scripts moving forward. So in order to change the scripts moving forward, right, what we want to manifest or create in the future, then we have to start changing those scripts now. And so with venting and complaining, that's part of changing those scripts. Complaining just tends to lean towards, I don't have any solutions, nothing's gonna change, it's everybody else's fault, right? Where venting is just that thing that happens. You think you look cool riding the horse by just leaning to the side when actually your ass is falling off. You're not looking cool. So, recreating those scripts, that's just that readjustment for you to get back up on that horse and do the damn thing. And yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today. I'm just still giggling from thinking about some things that I had conversations about with my friends. But after this, you know what you can do? I'm going to put the link to the ebook. I think I'm going to put that in the comments. But definitely follow up with the podcast because it gives a little bit more background to this conversation that we just had about venting versus complaining. So call people up to vent, but set some boundaries around that, all right?